My DJ fade has never been more important than with the YouTube algorithms now cracking down if you have 1.9 seconds of a song that last charted 64 years ago. So you got to be a little careful there. I'm not sure what you probably have some sort of corporate overlay, but I got to be. They're always picking on the little guy, and they're coming after Scary periodically, but it's all right. Anyway, of course, everyone who's watching now knows we have Nick Osen. Really great to have you. I know last time you were on, it was the early days of the season, just after the win over Miami. A little bit different outlook. Things have changed a lot, but we're going to have what I call a segment of 5 burning questions with Nick Osen. Great to have you aboard, man.
Scary, man. It's great to be back. I appreciate a lot of the podcasts and, kind of the content world with Wisconsin. And like we said, we were going to do it again soon. We'll talk some football. Obviously, times have changed a little bit, like you mentioned, but some recruiting stuff, maybe a little bit of hoops if you got time as well, Scary.
Oh man, I'll be hitting those 25-foot jumpers at the end of the podcast. Absolutely. You know me. I'm not afraid. I'm like Nick Boyd. Not afraid to let it loose, man. We're going to see the new Nick Boyd this year. Anyway, well, let's get started on the 5 burning questions. And one I think is really burning in terms of it's kind of happening in real time. Wisconsin has had a couple of offensive line decommitments from the 26 class in the last few days. I think that's probably caught some people by surprise. I'll raise my hand. I am one of them. And without getting too deep into the brass tacks of the hows and whys, where does that leave the offensive line recruiting room for the 26 class for the Badgers? Are there a couple prospects that can maybe bump that back up? Just kind of get us up to speed on that.
Yeah, Scary. Great timing, not with the news necessarily, of course, but just with kind of your question right now and us doing this, because I'm actually wrapping up a story on that. Our guy, John McNamara at the site, had a nice piece too on, maybe some guys they're looking at. But here's what I'll say. So right now, Aiden Dirksen is a PWO commit in the class. Now, he is a guy that could eventually be like a depth piece, okay? So he's really good for, certainly a PWO type of addition, really good player, has been a part of a great season. But obviously, looking at some scholarship guys as well. I'll leave the name out of it for now, as I'm just kind of, mentioned on 247. But Wisconsin will have an official visitor, offensive lineman coming in this weekend. So ideally, if things can move quickly there, then the Badgers can potentially add to it. They extended a junior college offer late Tuesday night. So that's a player to kind of keep an eye on. They offered another kid from out east that would have been early Wednesday morning. So like they're working to do some things. Obviously you'd expect a lot of that pretty young, the 2024, 2025 classes back in Madison. So I do think if there's a silver lining, right? Okay, some of these guys, most of these guys should be back. In terms of 2026, I'm looking for at least 1 scholarship commitment, maybe 2, or maybe like a high school guy and a JUCO guy. Scary. I know that they're looking to add. Now, when it was just Cochran, I didn't get the sense that they were just going full blown to kind of stack back up in the class, which I understand because it's late and that can be a tough position if you're not just going to empty the bag to land a guy, right? Relationships, development, all super important. But that's kind of where things are at. And I will just add this, Scary. Ben Novak, I was sensing a little bit of back and forth. We reported that schools were hitting him up, and that was starting to get a little bit more intense last week. But I will be honest, Maddox Cochran, that took a lot of people by surprise. And I don't think the timing of it was even, up to knowledge with some of his family, from my understanding. So it was an interesting one there for sure.
Yeah, I was taken by surprise. And you go from seeing these kids, playing the fan role with their shirts off at the Washington game, just doing the classic Badger offensive line stuff to just a couple of weeks later losing them. It's tough. I mean, obviously recruiting it's always a work in progress, and I'm not going to freak out about it, but it is suggestive. And this is me editorializing, suggestive of maybe some things going on inside that room coaching. But that's a topic for another day. So Jayden Petit, as you well know, just got a major bump in the recruiting rankings, to a 95, I believe, 247. So we have Petit and Latimer as kind of there may be a question that might be Hopkins too, but Petit and Latimer are kind of the crown jewels of this class. We know both of them have been taking visits. And without getting into which one who, what is your gut feeling right now as far as on signing day in December? Which the Badgers end up with two of those guys, one of those guys, or neither of them. If someone kind of had you under a heat lamp and said you got to give an answer, what is your gut feeling?
Yeah. Scary. These are burning questions, man. Definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely some tough ones. Let's include Hopkins in there because I do think he's pretty big time and will potentially be a really good starter in the future, ideally in Madison. So let's say those three, even though he's been more locked in seemingly and not necessarily taking visits. So I feel good about him as we record, right? We know, and I hope your fans know, our fans know that these things can change very quickly, especially in today's day and age and with agents and money. I mean, it's all gotten to be a little bit ridiculous. And that's talking about the state of the game, not these players or anything. But if you ask me in this moment, I feel pretty good about Latimer. I'm encouraged about the chances there, and I did give a little bit report on the website Wednesday morning about him as well. Jayden Petit, they're doing everything they can. I checked in multiple times this week. I don't think anything is over, perhaps, but I'm a little bit more nervous for Wisconsin about where things are trending a little bit there. Scary.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate your candor on that. I know there have been some other outlets that you don't work for that have some opinions on Petit potentially swinging over to
Hmm.
Oklahoma, but that's you know that's just grown-ups guessing about what a 17-year-old's doing, and
Yeah,
that's
and
kind of
you can always bring those up with me, because it's funny. A lot of people at On Three or at 247, like we've all kind of known each other, worked together in some form that form of fashion. So that was from I think I saw Steve Wiltfong, and obviously he's one of the best in the country, like an Alan True, Tom Loy, Brandon Huffman, a lot of those guys. I will just say that the sources I've spoken with on multiple sides there, as we record, that is still a little bit early in terms of like a prediction. Not saying it ends up correct, certainly not saying it's wrong, but from my understanding, and it doesn't get much closer than who I've been speaking with on either side, I would just say that Wisconsin is unquestionably still in it, but the Sooners are grabbing some momentum as we speak.
gotcha. Yeah, that's I appreciate the take, and that's unfortunately for better or worse what the non-expert recruiting guy Scary Alvarez vibe was as well. Okay, let's shift it to maybe a little less negative topics or a little more fun, at least. So we're looking ahead to 2026. I did a podcast on it this week, and by the way, if you are listening to, I'm talking to my fans and your fans, as I always do. Please like and subscribe on Scary Alvarez podcast. That helps the robots that decide whether they're listening to this and they flip you over to some PJ Fleck painting cats podcast. You never know what you're going to get with the algorithms, but I know having Nick on always helps. But um, we have a kid in Carter Smith that now has starting experience. We've
Hmm.
seen some upside there. Obviously, it's a work in progress. He's a true freshman who's just getting his feet wet as far as game action. But what do you think? And this is not an easy one either, Nick. What do you think is more likely? This is a binary. The Badgers hitting the portal again in an attempt to land a stud veteran quarterback, and then we'll let the chips fall where they may with the rest of the room, or the Badgers hitting the portal for guys to compete with Smith and kind of having a competition come spring. What's the more likely scenario?
Man, that's you know what? I think, and I don't like to do a cop out. Okay, I really don't. I think that either one is possible. Here's what I would say. Okay. I think that if they hit the portal, which obviously there's this talk about an influx of money and they will need to for some of these, key spots, I think that it would be more than just, kind of competition. But I think that guys within the program that elect to come back would have their opportunities to fight for it as well. I hope that's being clear. I think it is. So that is kind of what I would say because I mean I don't think Fickell even really shied away from it. He didn't mention the portal or anything this week, but at the quarterback position, there was a question about it at the presser, and he was like, there's got to be more. I think he said continuity and depth there, and obviously They're not going to, just kind of get 3 or 4 high school guys in one cycle, right? So you're getting Ryan Hopkins, who I think is, like I said, a future star. I think he's really impressive. I think Smith is toolsy and has shown some good things. Obviously, we'll see what happens with some of the other guys that are currently in the room. But then for a talk of an all-in type of season next year, right? And the influx of money, like I'd be pretty surprised if they're not at least fighting for and vying for arms like that. So potential QBs, at least if not in the top tier, at least kind of close to being up there, I think is fair potential. But just knowing like those guys cost an arm and a leg, as they say, in terms of kind of portal pricing, and Wisconsin's going to have to add probably another other couple premier positions too, just with losing a lot of seniors.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that. And I in my podcast just kind of reveal where I was. It wasn't that I didn't want to add additional talent to the quarterback room. My point was only that ideally we'd see a situation where you're developing from within at the same time you're covering your back. So, look, if you can get a
Well
$3 million
said.
superstar like a Petit or the kid in Indiana, you do it, no question. I don't think I just don't. I'm not confident Wisconsin would be in that tier, even with the improved funding. So I just hope that they give these young guys a chance to fight and keep them on board. I hate to see transfers, but and this doesn't have to be a long, going into all the details. But is there any chance beyond just a basic non-zero that Hopkins could contribute in 26?
Hmm. I mean, look, he's game ready. Like I will say that if you watch him, he's pretty polished. He's mobile. He throws a good ball. Got some great weapons out there modern day, but I think that'd be very early scary. I think that is what I would say. Smith will obviously be a year ahead in the offense, and then just figuring things out with like a potential veteran or two, right? I mean, going forward. So I think that surprised me, but I do think he has a chance to be the guy in the future.
That's good to hear. Yeah, he's definitely. I saw some of his game film, and again, I'm not an expert with breaking down quarterback film, but it meets the eye test. I mean, that is, at a bare minimum, it meets the eye test. Where some recruits, you look at their film and like, oh wow, they're a 90, they're a 4 star, and you see them, just toying with inferior athletes, and you're just kind of not quite sure. I didn't get
Yeah.
that vibe, and it's well known modern day is you're not going to get much better competition than you're going to get out there. So it's
hmm
it's it's encouraging.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, Scary. And I mean, honestly, with some of those highly rated, whatever position, but we'll say quarterback, oftentimes those guys are maybe like just kind of throwing wide open deep shots or just running at times, or their offenses
Hurts.
can be somewhat intriguing. But I think Hopkins is really nicely in that middle, and I think he's going to end up being a pretty damn good addition to the program.
Yeah, a little, and not to bury Graham Mertz, who I happen to like a lot, but a little bit different competitive landscape in the prep years than Graham Mertz had when he was a highly touted quarterback coming into Wisconsin. There's a little more of a, he's faced the adversaries in a sense that Graham never had the ability to do playing in Kansas. But
hmm
let's move on to Badger basketball. We could talk football forever. And I love giving you these tough questions. I can see it on your face. There's going to be another one. Wisconsin basketball 25-26. We're now 4 games in. We've got a little bit of a sample size. We haven't seen any great competitors necessarily as far as who they played. I think our strength of schedule is 336 right now. Of course, it'll ramp up very quickly. But just based on eye test and what you know about this team, you think this is going to be a better team than last season, similar or not as good?
Yeah. You know what? I respect it, man. These are these are some good ones. I would say, look, I think that it might take a little bit more time for this group to fully gel, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not picking this. I actually think Wisconsin can win against BYU, but let's say they lose by, I don't know, 11 or 12. Some fans will get nervous or negative and get down on things. But I just think the way that this team came together, right, pretty transfer heavy and just a lot of kind of different timing for some players. I think that they're going to take some time to gel. I think Greg Gard would tell you that as well. So I want to say that qualifier. But that said, Scary, because I don't want to just take the cop out. Oh, they could be about as good. So with that early qualifier, I think their ceiling is a touch higher, right? You had your first team All American in John Tonje, who is now in the NBA on a two-way. I think you've got a couple future pros in this group. I don't know about draft picks yet. I probably think so, but John Blackwell, Nolan Winter, I think they can both at least make the two-way level, make the NBA. I think they're incredible college basketball players. And then you add all those scoring options in kind of that top, we'll say starting lineup, of course, but top four with Boyd and Rapp, some of their scoring abilities. Andrew Rohde, one of the better 3-and-D pieces I've really seen. I keep going back to it. If those young guys on the bench, Janicki will still say is kind of in the middle. He's not young, but he's not a fifth year, hasn't had a ton of starting time or anything. So if he and the two young, Will Garlock, Bialuskis, if they can grow up quickly, I believe you are talking about a higher ceiling group that could get to at least that second weekend, and then you see what happens. But I believe they can score with nearly anyone in the country.
Great, I love that. A lot to kind of drink in there, and I'm with you. I think this is like like a little bit lower floor than last year, but a higher ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably how I describe it. And of course, when it comes to development, there's a lot of guesswork there. But boy, I think the and I guess it's been against smaller teams. I understand that, but the potential of Bialuskis and Garlock showing a little more inside than maybe we thought coming into the season will be a huge key. That is, I mean, obviously, Blackwell, Boyd, those guys are going to get theirs. I'm not concerned about that. Nolan Winter will have a great season, but it's these fringes. How deep is your rotation? Can you get meaningful front court minutes? And that, at least right now, we'll see. But going up against BYU and two potential lottery picks, including one big man, that's going to be a very interesting game. And no, I'm not going to freak out if we lose by 10. I'm just not. Okay, final question of the 5 burning questions with the incomparable Nick Osen, as we're going to get him out of here today. Sticking with basketball, let me back up a little bit. You see how the season that Daniel Freitag is having for Buffalo, an absolute breakout. And I suspect that has something to do with some things he was doing in the offseason to work on his game and stuff. But, I think some people are like, oh, no, I want to. My understanding, at least, is when he left, it was an understanding with him and Guard's just being honest. You can come in and compete, but we're not guaranteeing you anything. And he did his thing, and it's working out for him. And maybe it's okay for both sides. Who do you see on this Badger team? And it can be someone who's getting minutes. So I don't want to say it's a bench guy, but who is at the end of March, maybe hopefully closer to April, when the season is over, we look back and say, wow, didn't see that guy coming. I really like his future with Wisconsin and the stuff he showed us this year. Kind of a breakout guy. Who's that for the Badgers?
Yeah, well, first off, Freitag, credit to him, not saying for transferring or anything, but just the work that he seems to have done. And obviously early on in the season, some of those numbers. I mean, I knew him for years, covering his recruitment, even at my previous beat at Iowa State. And then obviously coming here, and then he was with the team, of course, awesome kid. And I think he's got a phenomenal future. With this group, Scary, and it's not going to be a guard spot, but somebody young that I think you can be really excited about. I'm going to give a different answer than I gave on another friend of ours podcast a couple weeks ago, just for some variety. I'm going to go with Alexis Bialuskis. Now, he looks like I don't see much of a drop-off necessarily, right? I'm not saying he's Nolan Winter right now or Austin Rapp, but I don't think there's like, oh my gosh, this is going to look so much different when he comes in the game. I was impressed by his rebounding. I think 2 out of the last 3 games, some of the work on the glass. Obviously, like I mentioned, offensively, he moves pretty well. He's getting better with his defensive rotations. And I mean, frankly, I think the guy's a little bit of a gamer, Scary, with just kind of some of his experience and his size. He's obviously a little bit older. So I think that was a pretty good eval. And I think he's someone that could be a 3 to 4 year contributor here in Madison.
Love it. And I'm not sure. I didn't think about this. I thought about asking you, not me, what the question would be, but that's a good answer. And again, we'll see how that stuff happens against the big bad Illinois and Purdue's of the world. But eye test early on, he looks like a pleasant surprise, and that's really nice to know. And I agree. He's not that you don't want someone to be successful professionally, but it's nice having guys fit into that they're good enough to be a good college player, but maybe don't jump right to the NBA. Not that that's been a big problem for Badgers, but anyway, so Bialuskas, and that's good. So, Nick, we're going to let you off the hook here. I know you were begging me to stay on for a couple hours today, but we're going to let you go. But thanks so much for giving your insight. You have a ton of information. Your fingers on the pulse of a couple of programs there at Wisconsin, and it's always great sitting down with you.
Scary, thank you so much. And like I said, I mean, I would definitely chop it up even further. So the next time, maybe we'll do 6 or 7 burning questions. I appreciate your time, and hopefully there'll be a couple wins in the near future.
You just do a 6-7 there. You did a 6-7. You're young. You're
Man,
with
it
it.
keeps happening organically. I swear to you.
I feel you. Later, my man.